highlight the free resource from the Duke Clinical and Translational Science Institute. We like free. So the NIH and others, the National Institutes of Health, have set out what are community-based participatory research principles. And I think that we need to wrestle with the principles in particular. I'm going to talk about how NIH discusses this, and then I'm going to talk about how the scholars around CBPR have set out 9 principles, and then 6 or 7 steps connected to CBPR. So I'm going to give overviews of those things. You'll see overlaps. If this is a Venn diagram, there's going to be overlap. But depending on your discipline and where you're entering the conversation about One Health, I think it's going to matter, right, which set of principles resonate most with you. So one of the things is to be clear about the purposes of engagement and the populations and communities you want to engage. So I want to share part of my motivation or where the emphasis around CBPR comes from for me. I used to work in the College of Agricultural Sciences and in the Vice President for Diversity Office, which became the Office for Inclusive Excellence. In my time there, given my research background, I would often get calls on Thursday. So it would go this way. First, I get an email. And then I would get a phone call on my 491 number. And then someone would get a hold of my cell phone number, and I'd start getting phone calls and texts there from PIs on campus who were like, because it was Thursday, had come across the part in the grant where they needed to have community engagement, right? And so they would reach out to me and say, Shannon, do you know someone in Puerto Rico we can partner with? Do you know someone on the Navajo reservation that we can connect with so that we can do water quality monitoring, right? All of these were great, important research efforts, and it's too late. It's too late, right? So centering the community earlier in the conversation is where my emphasis, my passion around CBPR really started to take hold. Because maybe I did know folks, but I don't, can I spend that social capital without knowing more about the project and without trusting that this relationship is going to be sustainable? So no matter who is the scholar or who's putting out the principles, being clear about the community is important. Become knowledgeable about the community's culture, economic conditions, social networks, political and power structures, norms, values, demographic trends. In other words, context matters. I remember, this is a long time ago, probably 15 or 20 years ago, there was a conversation about working with Indigenous communities in and around Colorado. And my emphasis once I was brought into the conversation was no matter what we say, we have to follow up. Because the history is that we don't do what we say we're going to do, right? And that's historical from a lot of institutions. It goes on. Build and maintain relationships and trust. Trust is a big word. Trust is hard to build. It takes time. It takes consistency. It takes showing up. It takes being believable and being authentic, and folks thinking you're going to be here to help put the tables away too, to help take out the trash. So remember and accept that collective self-determination is the responsibility and right of all people in a community. No external entity should assume it could bestow on a community the power to act in its own self-interest, right? I could share story after story there, but I'll pause. Establish a partnership with the community to create change. So I want to be clear that CBPR is not agnostic about the desired outcomes. It very much wants to create change. It very much wants to find a solution. So recognize and respect the diversity within the community. We're going to talk more about that. Identify and mobilize community assets and strengths, right? just because a community has a problem that we can identify or that the community can identify does not mean that it doesn't have resilience and grit and strengths. Community cultural wealth is real and it is present, no matter which community it is that we're talking about. Individuals and institutions must be prepared to release control. This part's hard, and be sufficiently flexible to meet changing needs. Foster community collaboration and long-term commitment. So another piece of this, and promotion and tenure, so maybe at the end we can talk a little bit about that. So to do CBPR well, it's a long-term investment. It's not an in and out thing. And then again, we're back to trust. To demonstrate a trustworthiness, it's fundamental to sustaining successful community engagement. So I think, and I'm here to share with you, and I hope that you will come along this journey with me, that community engaged scholarship writ large, and specifically community-based participatory research, is a competitive advantage of land-grant institutions. Our service orientation, our mission around providing access for the benefit of Colorado, right? This is the CSU mission. That aligns well with CBPR. We also have this incredible resource as a land grant in the Office of Engagement and Extension that other universities don't have. And I don't think, perhaps at one point, we were more literate as an institution around extension. I think we can get back there, but I don't find as much awareness around extension as a part of the land grant institution that I once did. So I think that we need to spend some more time talking about this is our university, and I think it's our competitive advantage for all of the research. Okay, that's a bit for most of the research that we do. And that that it is important to lean into this gem, which I don't think that we would come together as a society to create right now. I don't think we believe in the collective good enough to create extension at this point. So we have it, and it is our advantage. So we need to lean into that. And this is the our purpose in the Office of Engagement Extension. We work with Coloradans and their communities so all can thrive, right? Access, benefit of Colorado, people thriving. And then I love this quote. It's in a paper. I found it on a wall at an institution that I visited when I did a visual ethnography study at land grant institutions in the Rocky Mountain West. And it's Liberty Hyde Bailey, and he was an administrator in the early 1900s at a land grant. And he's credited for saying the university belongs to the people of the state. It will justify its existence only as it serves the people. And I think that this ties, one, to our mission for both OEE and as an institution. It also ties to CBPR and engaged scholarship. It also ties to where we are in the crossroads right now as higher ed. Right? If we're going to build trust, people have to know that we benefit, that their livelihoods, their lives are impacted by what we do in higher ed. So, who is OEE, the Office of Engagement Extension? We're a purpose-driven division, and these are 4 of the things we do. We empower lifelong learning. So often, folks, when you think about OEE, you think 4-H, right? As someone who's charged with focusing on the research component of OEE, I think about how are we studying that? How are we studying youth education and youth development in all that we're doing around lifelong learning? We're also continue to do professional development for adults across the developmental stages. So another place to do research. Occupational therapy has a lot of interest here for folks post-incarceration, right? How do we make sure that these folks are integrated back into society and can achieve professional goals after they have been incarcerated? Expanding access to education. So this has always been a part of OEE. It is specifically a part of our educational access team, which came out of the rural initiative. So we have folks throughout the state, 5 people, who target working with youth in Colorado, specifically rural Colorado, about coming to CSU, right? And what it means. So as someone who grew up in rural Colorado, the college going culture is different than the college going culture, let's say in Fort Collins, right? So how do we have this conversation in a way that honors the knowledge and wisdom skills of the community of places like where I came from, and authentically sharing how can you achieve your goals that will benefit where and honor where you come from by moving on in higher education. And how do we study it, right? How do we research what works and what doesn't? Promoting prosperity in communities. So this comes down to agriculture, it comes down to mental health, it comes into aging, it comes into all of the things, prosperity across the board, economics, etc., and advancing engagement and research for impacts. What we do in OEE has to be readily translated into impact that benefits communities. And I think CBPR is a part of that. So why would folks want to engage with us? OE is growing in terms of proposal growth. If you're wondering why, right, this is a product of why this number is smaller than this number. Because it depends. Sometimes you submit in one year, it gets counted the next year. We're also discovering, because of the way structurally OE is situated in the research space, our research proposals don't always get counted within our division. They get counted within different colleges, right? So we're figuring some of that out. So part of this is a counting data management piece. But we're growing. No matter what you think of where the numbers come from, we're growing. We're growing in the number of dollar amount of proposals and in the kind of money that we're bringing in. And we're on target to exceed this year as well. Okay. So in the beginning, I shared that I was going to talk about engaged scholarship at large and then focus in on CBPR. So what is engaged scholarship? So Dr. Miranda is here and was instrumental and credited for doing some great work around the Provost Council for Engagement. This is a product of that team. It does borrow from other universities who also talk about engaged scholarship, land grants across, and this is our version of it. So it's the continuum of engaged scholarship. And I have 2 slides. One talks about the what and the why, another one talks about the how. So when we're talking about the what and the why, there are different stages. There's a stage that's focused on outreach and some stages that are focused on engagement. I am finding that amongst our campus faculty, there's some confusion, or at least some conflation of outreach and engagement. So folks often talk about, use the word engagement, and what they're talking about is outreach. So if the goal is to provide the public with objective and empirically based information, important, right? I'm not saying that one of these is better than the other. I think they have different purposes. It's to inform. The value is it provides information that can be applied to a given need, and it takes our work and disseminates it to a broader audience. That's outreach, right? Going on public radio and sharing, what was a recent thing? Watering your lawns right now, right? That's outreach. It's important. It's great. It's not engagement, right? So we want to move the conversation over here because this positions us as the experts. It's not co-creation and collaboration. Citizen science lands here in the involve. So anyone have any examples of citizen science? Not rhetorical. Yeah.
The same with bird counts.
December bird counts.
Measuring sunlight penetration in water bodies.
Cool. I didn't know about that one. That's a great one. I think about the bees, right? That we had a lot of citizen scientists identifying bees for a while around campus. You would find people around bushes, and they were all identifying bees. Great work. Citizen science is great work. That's involving. And the ideas do not start with the community, right? It doesn't center the community. It still centers the researcher and their ideas. CBPR is when the university and the community come together. It is true engagement. It is true co-creation. So this ends with an answer. This one starts with an answer. Okay? So we work together to create mutually valued and inclusive outcomes. We have new perspectives that will emerge that will have seemed impossible before, right? I love that everything seems impossible until it's done. Trust enables greater level of innovation, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. One of the things that I loved in my previous role was being able to talk about the importance of bringing people with different lived experiences into a room to look at a problem, because you're going to see things that I don't see. So collectively, we're going to see more. There's also capacity building. Communities heard and empowered, and new methods of knowledge making are explored and developed. The university sees its place and role within a larger ecosystem. It gets us out of our heads and into the community. So how do we do that? So again, inform. Some of the ways that we do that in engaged scholarship is stakeholder analysis, right? This is often a survey, research with real world data, contributing expertise to a community research project. Some of the ways we do that is through guest speakers or being a guest speaker, conferences and workshops, and service looks like expert testimony, responding to an email that comes in, you know, my snake is ill, what should I feed it? Kind of thing, right? Providing information, community-wide media posts, etc. Okay, I already mentioned citizen science. So a way to involve is to convene various stakeholders on research issues, demonstration projects. So this is sci on the fly, right? Those kinds of things. Service learning, applied internships, managed learning environments. And then as service, serve as an information professional, relationships with companies, right? You see that? It's not communities, it's companies. And bringing bringing community members to CSU committees. So I think of this, I've been on a number of search committees where we've brought in folks. That's not a research project, but that's an example of that kind of service. Co-creation, right, which is where community-based participatory research is community science. It includes community partners as authors, right? So it deals with the issue or the concept of power in a very different way in terms of who is an expert, right? The expertise of those with lived experiences in communities is as valued as the expert in R, right? The statistician on the team. Co-founding startup with external partners. It develops programs. It's coordination of community-led teaching. So one of the beautiful things that comes out of CBPR is folks are empowered and engaged and experts. So we don't have to be all the places, right? Folks take that into places where this or conversations where decisions are being made and where things are being outcomes are being considered. Partnerships with national associations, consortia, seminars, etc. Focus groups. I'm all about the engagement. So why and how can awesome engagement and extension be a partner with you all. So this is just a visual of where we are in the state, which is everywhere. We're everywhere. So all of the light blue or turquoise flags, those are extension offices in the state, right? And there are some places, if you've been down to, I was just down in Baca County, I think 2 weeks ago, right? That's a very, very different place than Summit County. And radically different than Jefferson County, right? And the needs are different. We have community experts, local experts in all of these places. So if we can systematically engage researchers on campus with these offices, I really think that is our competitive advantage to making a real world difference around some of these sticky problems. A piece of this is the Forest Service is now, or at least July 1, will be a part of the Office of Engagement and Extension. So they are often co-located or near these extension offices. And they're everywhere too, right? So the impact, the power of co-creating and working with these offices with scholars on campus, experts on campus, has just, in my opinion, been compounded. There's more to do. Okay, deep breath. We're getting into it. So the strict CBPR folks. Is it Brittany? It starts with a B. Anyway, I'm gonna forget Israel's first name. She the books, the quintessential textbooks on CBPR are comes from Israel. Other groups, other disciplines have their CBPR champions and their textbooks, and often they will cite Israel. So I'm using Israel's work to center this conversation. So what is the framework when an academic is talking about CBPR? What are they talking about? So CBPR conducts research with communities rather than on communities. That's a critical difference. Critical difference. There are 9 principles, and Israel says 5, others say 6 or 7 critical steps, but I'm going to talk through those. I also want to point out that this is Mesa Verde, which I looked out my window my whole childhood looking at. So it's very important to me that you know that, and that picture is in this talk. So what are the 9 CBPR principles? I think that I want to thank James Pritchett, and I want to recognize the work of Debbie Fiddler in this paper that I am using to guide this. I think it does a really good job of laying out the principles and the steps around CBPR. So if you're not ready to dive into a textbook, right, if you're not ready to commit to becoming a CBPR scholar right now, I would encourage you to read this paper to get really a clear understanding of what CBPR is and what it isn't. And this group of researchers focus on working with communities that have cognitive or physical disabilities. So that's the space that they're talking about CBPR. So principle 1, community is a unit of identity. So this is a really big shift. It's an easy sentence, but it's a huge shift in how we're looking at things, because the community is the center. It is centered. We just read a number of applications for an award on engaged scholarship. And one of the criteria that we looked at in reviewing these papers or these submissions is these nominations, that's the word I'm looking for there, is who was centered. Did they say I, or did they say the scholar, the PI, or did they say the community? And it was rare that the community was centered in the conversation, which shows that, in my mind, that there's a way to go in how we're approaching this methodology. So you have to identify who that is. So maybe it's women of color. Maybe it's a particular zip code. Maybe it's CBPR scholars, right? Who is the community that you're talking about? An important piece is when you do this, heterogeneity is inherent to a community, right? There, just because we are a community right now doesn't mean that we're all the same. And recognizing that, embracing it, leaning into it will go a long ways when you're doing community-based work. Because that difference, those differences, while it is your strength as a researcher, it must be managed or it can derail the whole project. All right, and that also is not easy, and trust is critical. Intentional management is necessary, and community agreements are important at the outset. So it's important to set up front, how are we going to engage in disagreement while we're all still getting along? We can't design those pieces and that process when we're already in the middle of the mess, right? Principle 2, otherwise, privilege and identity will decide how this goes, and then it's not community-based participatory research. All parties serve as partners and collaborate throughout the research process. So we're co-setting priorities. We're co-identifying the research topic. What are we going to study? The research question, what is it? And we're going to co-develop methods. And this is usually where folks have the most heartburn. We're also going to co-analyze. Right? That's big. We're going to build on community strengths and resources to foster learning and community capacity building. Expertise is valued. That's critical. You can't extract from community. We've done that for a long time. And I would say that it has contributed in large part to where we find ourselves today. It relies on mutual reciprocity regarding information, skills, knowledge, and capacity building among the partners. So the community must be getting as much out of it as we are. They must be getting it must be reciprocal. We're not just going in to study them, right? We are working together to study a problem. Co-learning is centered, right? I have something to learn from you and you have something to learn from me. We attend to social inequalities and power dynamics, real and perceived. Ignoring them isn't an option. We establish trust, which means that there's a long-term process and a commitment to sustainability. We're not in and out. We're not visitors, right? This is where you might hear a quip about folks, we're not someone to visit at the zoo, right? Don't come look at us. We are people, we are communities with knowledge, and we need to be centered as such. Research and co-learning is cyclical and iterative. It's not going to be straightforward. It's not going to be linear. We're going to have to go back and back and back. So we need to create effective communication and power sharing. Are meetings accessible? Do you have childcare? Who can come? Who can't? What time of day? All of these kinds of things matter. And accessibility of research products. So, right, if we're writing in a peer-reviewed journal, important. I am not saying it's not important. Important, critical. That is a step. So are other ways of sharing the information. Focus on the development and maintenance of research community trust. If you take away nothing from this talk, please take this. Building trust is critical to engage scholarship and specifically to CBPR. This is another piece. It's all connected. It's all connected. And context is critical before we get into context. Context before context. To say that in big words, CBPR is grounded in biosocioecological theories that emphasize the role of multiple, dynamic, and interacting systems that influence human development and public health outcomes. These sticky problems did not develop overnight, right? They are the product of systems that are likely working very well as intended, right? To benefit some and not benefit others. So these sticky problems, we have to understand the context, the container, before we can actually find a solution that will be sustainable, that we can co-create together. This will also be critical in building trust, because if you don't understand my history, you're not going to understand my problems. Combines knowledge generated, principle 8, generated by the research process with social change action. Again, it's not agnostic around the outcomes. It wants change to improve community health and eliminate health disparities. So CBPR very much has a focus on health. It is expanded out, right, into other spaces. So there's a balance between generation of new knowledge and developing interventions and mobilizing advocacy for the mutual benefit. Again, we're into that reciprocal space. And knowledge is applied to make real world change. Finally, principle 9, research findings are disseminated in ways that are understandable and useful to community partners. Right? Okay, so what are the steps? So it depends on who you read, right? There's 5, 6, or 7 of these. But in general, they all say the same thing. Some of them combine them on different steps, but this is a good place to start. So again, Riggs and Fiddler set this out well. So 1, identify the community, right? When I talked about that Venn diagram, we're back to that. So that's a critical piece. Collaborate with community of interest to determine research questions. That means I don't have some coming into the conversation. Right? That's really hard for us to do. We develop community agreements when we're all happy and at the outset. How are we going to engage the conversation? We have to determine appropriate research methods, which means that my favorite research method, I'm a mixed methodologist, may or may not be appropriate to the research question that we develop as co-creators. We involve the community in the data collection and the data analysis. This is where I usually, again, see people go, in the data analysis, yes, the data analysis. And then a critical piece, I hear this a lot. Now that I've been in OHI for a year, and again, I'm doing interviews with all of the field faculty one-on-one, and I'm hearing about campus researchers who have engaged with extension faculty to do some research project, and they're like, and we never heard the outcome. We don't know what happened. And then that impacts the trust that we have as extension faculty in the communities that we are in, right? So we've got to fix that. So back to the beginning. I think that community-based participatory research and engaged scholarship writ large is a way to build public trust. I think it is a way to take advantage of the land grant mission in a way that is authentic and solves real world sticky problems. I also think it's a reason to hope. I did read in the Chronicle of Higher Ed that this has gone up a little bit from 2023. So this is a snip from an actual Chronicle paper where the percent of public that has confidence in higher ed was down. I think 2025 was the lowest. I think 2026 there's an indication that it's going up, but it was like 17%. You know, it wasn't great. So I think that it is a reason to hope if we engage the community differently in our research so that folks understand the importance of the research that we do. So we don't have to then convince them that we matter. So at this point, I want to have a conversation. I have talked a lot. I am clearly passionate about this. I care about it. But do you have questions, concerns, ideas about how we can move forward, suggestions, hopes, dreams? How can community-based participatory research be involved in One Health?
So I'm gonna also just say, well, first, thank you, Tammy.
Okay.
For those of you online, just raise your hand or come off mute. Hopefully you'll be able to come off mute and then questions in the room as well. And of course, I have questions, but I'll wait and try to see what others. Thank you, Kelly. Yeah. Well, one of the, I mean, this is a little adjacent, Shannon, but one of the reasons we asked you to come and speak today was at our last affiliate meeting, the question came up about OEE. What does OEE do? Does One Health work with OEE? And how do you engage with OEE? So if you're a student or a faculty member or a staff member and trying to figure out like, where's the entry point? What does that look like? And I know you guys cover obviously a variety of areas and topics and all sorts of things. So
Yeah, you all are gonna have to remind me what commercial it is that's like, I've been everywhere, or it's a song. I should have Rick sing it, not me. There are a lot of different ways. If you're an undergraduate student, one of the first things that come to mind is the extension internships. We've done some great community-based work through those internships, and they are very limited because of the funding available for those internships. It's now more competitive to get in just on the number of people who apply versus the number of spaces to get an extension internship than it is to get into our vet school. So, yeah. There's definitely and there's desire in the field for those summer interns to come and get a sense of how extension does its work. Graduate students are often the beneficiary of those internships, so they're engaging there. I also think that graduate students are this past fall, Jennifer Martin, Jessica Metcalf, and I led a seminar on engaged research. And I think that graduate students have an incredible opportunity to do things a little differently, right? They can push envelopes differently than PIs who are seeking tenure and promotion. So I think that's an opportunity to do some at least engaged research. Maybe I would argue that it's unless their PI is already doing CBPR, they likely don't have the time to invest to truly do CBPR. In my head is it's not CBPR unless it's CBPR, right? Because I passed my methodology classes. But I think that there is an opportunity there, and there are a number of folks in extension who have PhDs and could serve on committees for graduate students around community-based work or engaged scholarship. PIs, I think it's going to be a matchmaking thing. And so there's two of us focused on this matchmaking right now, and that's new to OEE. So that's Dr. Mung Mangu, who's the former head of horticulture and landscape architecture. So, and was an extension specialist before that. So a lot of time in extension. So she can help connect folks, and I'm more than willing to meet with folks to talk about ways that we can partner well. Yeah, and it's going to take time. So I just want to emphasize that. Jessica.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks for your talk. I appreciate it. It was great. My question for you is, we work with a lot of PIs across campus, and we are advising them on how to create these proposals. What is one thing, two things that we need to be saying with regard to the community engagement within that proposal?
Is it real? Right. Yeah. Is it real? And how are you going? Right. This is my first answer, but likely, tonight when I'm on a plane, I'll have a better answer after I think about this a little bit more. But my initial answer is Is it real? So can they demonstrate that they have engaged with the community prior to right now? Right, prior to
Okay.
whatever it is, like how have they engaged with the community so that they even know someone to call, right?
Okay.
Right, they're not just gonna do a Google search if they get funded. And
Okay.
then, right, so is it real? And then the
Absolutely.
second is there a real plan for getting that research back to the community? And
Okay.
how will we hold us accountable to that?
And for somebody that is new to that engagement, is that something that obviously they can work with your office ahead of time
Yeah,
to make sure that we get that in there correctly?
absolutely. We would
Okay.
love that.
Right.
Yes, we want to build those bridges and connection. I think there's a lot of potential for building that connective tissue between our field faculty and our campus faculty. Yeah. Yeah,
A fantastic presentation.
thanks.
I'm curious about some of the methods you've used for initiating engagement with communities.
Mm.
And what that looks like and what's worked and what hasn't worked, knowing that every community is going to be different and it's context specific as well.
First, show up and demonstrate you're willing to carry the water. Are you willing to light the fire and carry the water? I get very much into lived experiences here. My grandparents did not have high school educations. They did not have elementary school educations. They knew a lot. They were super smart. So another thing is they had very good bullshit meters. So their ability to see through whether or not you authentically were there to build relationship with them, or you were seeking to gain something from them, they were real clear on. And I think that's true of a lot of communities. So the first thing is to show up. Show it's building a relationship. So in the most trusted relationships a researcher has in their personal lives, it's the same way. You show up, you be consistent, you build trust, you're believable, you're authentic, you don't put on airs, right? You show a genuine interest in the community. Do you have ideas?
I'm struggling. I work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Yeah.
And we're very limited in this current socio-political climate.
Yeah.
I work as the wildlife health social scientist over there. So I'm bridging One Health concepts with people essentially. And I have the lovely issue of screwworm currently.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm
So
trying.
are you working with Kathy? Kathy Whitman?
No, not.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, work with
But-
Kathy Whitman.
But yeah, so I'm trying to figure out ways
Huh?
to.
She has screwed.
She does not have screw. She's the state veterinarian.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay, but I'm.
Extension.
Through
Extension.
extension.
State veterinary Maggie, yeah, but-
Yes, sorry, yes, yes. I have a particular lens now.
But I'm just trying to figure out some of the, and I work with Dr. Sam Gibbs. She's the wildlife veterinarian and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And we're just trying to get ahead of some of this community engagement around screwworm and surrounding areas of wildlife refuges. But I'm limited to the capacity of being near people and places. So I'm kind of trying to find creative ways to build that relationship, but not actually be there. So I'm kind of hitting the wall.
So extension is there, right? Beth Hayes is our emergency management. Send me an email. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
That's a bad days.
Oh, is there another one? Oh.
Oh.
Oh, okay, sorry, yeah. Yeah, so Beth Hayes in extension, out of the Pueblo office is our emergency management specialist. So Beth and Kathy are the folks that I think that you should partner with closely. And especially as the Forest Service makes a whole lot of sense to me that The Forest Service is a part of OEE, partly because of the funding and partly because of our outreach and the work that we do. But I think there's a way to coordinate our efforts and to break down some of these silos that are limiting our impact, right? Because we are limited in our resources and time. So yeah, happy to connect. Yeah.
And we should connect as well. We put in, with Jessica Metcalf, now there's a new world school proposal to USTA, that if we get funded is a big part of that is exactly this linking with communities, including wildlife and working with Kathy and others. So we
Fantastic.
should, yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
So Paul, I see your hand up.
Yes, hello. I want to start off by apologizing as I joined a little bit late because of another meeting. So I wasn't able to listen to the entire presentation, but I wanted to join for the last even couple minutes because I believe this is a very important topic and was really grateful for this space to talk about it. So thank you. My question is about compensation. So when we have community partner, maybe you did address this before, which I missed. But yeah, when we engage community partners, essentially that partners in research, in work, whatever it may be, I believe that fair and appropriate compensation is required. And I had the opportunity to write a grant and receive a grant for community engaged research, working with Dr. Sue Schneider, who's the health PRU director, I believe.
Yeah.
But when we're putting into grant budgets, compensation for community partners and justifying these budgets, these values, I was wondering if you had any strategies or resources where we can say, yes, this is what's fair, this is what's appropriate, and this is what we should be providing for these community partners when we expect them to engage in research just as any other investigator.
Fabulous question. I'm gonna put a shameless plug in. So this fall, through the Vice President for Research Office, we're gonna do a whole seminar series on CBPR, which I'm really, really excited about. And one of the things we're gonna talk about is how our systems, how to navigate our systems well when you're doing engaged scholarship and community-based research. So what you're bringing up is a real problem, right? So I don't want to dismiss it. It is, you run into a lot of bureaucratic hurdles to make things happen. So one of the, there are ways around it. Context, right? Context before content. I think the context matters, and there are folks who have figured out ways to do this. So I think of Martine Carcassonne. I think of Katie. What's Katie's last name? In Communications Center for Public Deliberation. Anyone? There are researchers who have figured out ways to do this within different colleges. I also think that this is going. It is my hope. It is my hope that this will get easier as we do the alignment around HR. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Alignment with HR and our finance folks, because the reality is I've been in now 3 large divisions, some subsets, and the way that we do things has been different. It's almost like going to a different institution, right? So folks will be like, what do you, this is not how you do travel. And I'll be like, well, that's how I did travel for 15 years. So how do we do travel over here? So the concept that you're talking about, it depends on where you are, right? College of Health and Human Sciences does it differently than the College of Liberal Arts, does it differently than the College of Vet Med and Biomedical Sciences. And there's different levels of expertise within those financial units about the policies and processes to make those happen. So the first thing I would do would be to connect you to someone who's done it, right? So that then we can connect your finance person with their finance person, so we can, like, this really isn't verboten. We can make this happen. We're not trying to do anything illegal. We're not trying to launder money, right? Which is really what they're concerned about. I think the other part of your answer to your question is at the end of your question. Yes, people should be fairly and equitably compensated for the expertise they bring to the project. So one of the ways to do that within a project is to name them as investigators, because then the compensation translates to the funding agency, right? Because they understand funding investigators and understand that their time is valuable.
Then the other thing that we've had
Yeah.
recently working with partners was when it's difficult to actually compensate, like from a salary perspective, we've made sure to budget for travel to meetings or supplies for meetings or the
A piece of equipment.
other costs that we know inherently come into it if you're not able to support salary directly.
Yeah. Yeah, but it gets tricky. So it would be appropriate to in some communities that I'm familiar with, that I grew up around, it would be appropriate if you're coming to their home to bring food, right? To bring food. And like through the NSF advanced RFP process, you could not buy food. Right? So if we had been doing a CPPR project, the negotiating that stuff gets, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, that's a great point. And another hurdle that I've encountered and some of my other colleagues engage doing community-engaged research or community-based participatory research is that if we do have these community partners as investigators, like they're like bureaucratic kind of paperwork, like an NIH biosketch, they just don't know how to put those things together. So
Yep.
that's just like another hurdle, another kind of threshold that we definitely have to support in. But like lowering that barrier, lowering that hurdle for community partners to be eligible, like they are eligible investigators, even just the eligibility criteria for some of the funding mechanisms, they need to have an advanced degree or whatever it may be. But I think, yeah, at the systemic level, if those kind of larger changes should be made, I think for or to facilitate, I think community partners to be able to be named as an investigator, they don't or supports in place for them to put together like an NIH biosketch or paperwork that's necessary to be a named investigator. So these are just thoughts that I have, and again, just hurdles that we've encountered trying to do community engaged research.
Yeah. So when Paul, you didn't hear this, but one of the outcomes that I am seeking through this talk and the talks that will happen in the fall is to raise the level of the conversation, to engage more people in the conversation about what does it take to get engaged scholarship, specifically community-based participatory research done. So the joy that I have right now is Jessica Hunter just heard you say all that, right? Jessica has access to people who make decisions about these things. I'm not going to solve all those problems by myself, but collectively we can address some of these systematic barriers so that we can get more of this done. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would add too is that naming somebody like you're saying as an investigator per se in the way that CSU frames it may be different in how you can frame it in your proposal as well. So there's different layers in where you can do that, and you can get creative within that proposal to make sure that they are in there. They're showing legitimate fund. They should be funded in some way, but you're not naming them as an investigator that we're going to put in quality as a co-PI, something like that. That is a totally different level and a level of expectations, and it reduces the burden that you're going to have on your community partners. So, but yeah, let me know if you have questions. I'm happy to help.
Thank you.
Paul, let's keep talking, and hopefully you'll be interested in the seminar series this fall. It's
Oh, for sure.
1:02 you all, so I want to honor your time. I want to thank you for the conversation and the interest, and I hope that this conversation continues. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Just quickly, will the slides be shared?